For this episode of the Amped Up podcast, we brought on Nedal Ahmad, who's a childhood friend of mine. This conversation covers everything from Nedal's time in Palestine, parenthood, business, and men's mental health. He's the co-founder of Pincho Factory, which is the award-winning Miami-born restaurant chain, and Nedal opens up about the struggles of entrepreneurship, running Cracker's Southern Dining in Miami Springs, and now venturing into the nonprofit world. His latest project, Heal For Us, is an organization dedicated to increasing access to therapy for those who can't afford it.
And yes, life is hard, and you know, we're never gonna be in this utopia where we can sip margaritas all day. As nice as it sounds, it's just never gonna happen.
Yeah. And you wouldn't feel good about it either way.
I probably would, to be honest with you. How was your trip?
It was nice, bro. I had never been to San Diego. I had no idea what the homeless population here I'm very familiar with. The homeless population on the West Coast or even in the Midwest.
Completely different scenario.
Ooh. Scary almost, I want to say, in terms of like how young people are and the amount of drug use that exists. You know, it's alarming. People, I mean, I posted a reel of people doing heroin on the side of the street because I just walked by and it was so in my face.
Oh, I must have missed that one. I didn't see that.
No, I just posted it, like 3 days ago. But I just found that it was interesting because he's just doing heroin on the side of the street. He was actually smoking it. He was scraping it. He had aluminum foil and he was scraping it.
Wow.
And then just smoking it right there. So I start talking to the guy and the first thing is, you a cop or something? I was like, no, are you a cop or something?
But, yeah, it's interesting. Are you familiar with what Canada recently did with their homeless population?
No. What did they do?
So they selected a group and gave them $6,500. No strings attached. Here you go. And 2/3 of them found stable housing within the first 90 days.
Again, it goes back to an assessment. I don't feel it would be wise to blindly hand out $6,500 to the homeless, because we've done projects here where it was almost a housing first model where we will get them into housing, offer supportive care, stuff like that. And it could be effective, but it really depends on the level, on the mental state of the individual
right.
you're putting in there. But I do know that there's a lot of programs like that. How blind, like if I walked you around downtown and said, okay, I'm going to choose who you give $6,500 to, and I will bet those $6,500 will disappear off the face of the planet. I mean, it wouldn't be too hard. But yes, would it help? Absolutely.
I'm sure the other 30%, probably ended up not making some great decisions with it. But 2/3 is a wildly successful program.
Are you kidding me?
Similar situation in Stockton, California, which they went a huge step further. $500 a month for basically the entire city population. And few things that came from that. Mental health improvements. Mm-hmm. Work actually increased. Unemployment rate dropped in the city. People finding more meaningful work. People being able to leave a job or go to an interview. There's one story of a guy who was cutting it so close on his paycheck that $500 was the difference of him taking a day off, finish a certification, get an interview, and make about $4 more an hour.
That's huge. That's huge. No, my doctoral project was on the utilization of outreach programs in order to decrease hospital stays and length of stay and emergency room visits as well of the homeless population. And the way that you do that is you have to target the people who are the highest users. So there's I think there's 90 people. There's on any given day, and this, I don't know the stats right now, there's something called a PIT count, a point in time count, that they do twice a year for the homeless population throughout the state of Florida. And that's where they get the actual numbers for the homeless population. And so on that given night, people literally go out to the streets in teams and count heads of people. So when you do that, you start to see, okay, how many homeless individuals exist? And let's say in Miami-Dade County, I think, and there's a 40-block radius right around downtown where there are, I want to say about 90% of the homeless population of Miami-Dade County exists in that 40-block radius. So let's say it's 1,000 people. Those 1,000 people, out of those, I'm sorry, I was having a brain fart. Out of those 1,000 people, there's probably 90 of them that take up about 75% of the resources.
Interesting.
So if you target those 90 people, the costs that you're going to save for the city are immense, and the lives that you could potentially change are also huge too, right? Because now you have a lot more money to use elsewhere. But what I learned about working in the nonprofit sector, which is interesting that you're stepping into this, and I didn't even know we were going to go into it right away, but I guess we will. The part about the nonprofit sector that worried me a lot was the misuse of funds. And it fucked with me, honestly, because you go in with an open heart, and you go in like wanting to help a lot, and then you start to see like, oh wait, I have a budget of $1 million for this particular project, and I start doing the math. Dude, I'm using like $150,000 to $200,000. Where's the other 800 going? Shh, be quiet, little boy.
Right.
Be quiet down. So I feel like with certain organizations, I think they do amazing work and they really do help people. But I don't know if the money always adds up, or there's a lot of misuse of funds. And I think that's a common theme with some of the big organizations.
And that's usually the case with a overinflated board. There's a lot of parallels in that nonprofit sector to politics, right? It's a lot of the favors, and we'll make this donation for a seat on the board and for certain amounts of control. Mm-hmm. It is a very weird sector, and I don't want to generalize it because there's a lot of people that do amazing work out there.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the behemoths are usually the ones misusing stuff.
Yeah. The cool part about it is, though, that most of the people that work for those organizations really have the value and the mission of that organization in mind. So I've never worked around people that truly wanted to help other people. Like it was just really, we all knowingly were taking a pay cut to work for this organization, right? And when you know that, and you still want to make a difference, and then you're still motivated to help people any way you can, I think that gives me hope for humanity, honestly, more than anything.
I think young people's views on that gives me a lot of hope for humanity. And I know younger folks get a lot of flack for being dumb, and I think I can attest that we've all been dumb at some age.
Like now.
And yes, to a certain extent, still are. But there's a empathy in this generation that's coming up that I think even ours doesn't have, and previous ones definitely didn't. And I view currently social entrepreneurship as the future of entrepreneurship. I think people are jumping out of these jobs because they want more meaning in their lives, and pay is a big one, but I think people are looking for more of a purpose, something to leave a legacy behind. At least that's been my experience in now launching this new organization.
What's your purpose, actually? What is it? Nedal, so actually tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't want to. So I know you because is it your dad who owned the grocery store next?
Still does. 36 years now. I mean, there's about a year apart between our dads buying the businesses next to each other.
Okay. So that's your dad owns the grocery store that's next to my dad's tire shop, which is correct. On 103rd Street and 35th Ave. If you need tires or groceries, here we are.
And my brother owns the food truck that's parked in between the two, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So that Banco Mistake is also supporting my brother. So
awesome. That's amazing. So just a family of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And so where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your background. What brought you... What brings you here, right? Gosh. Why are we talking? Why is Nedal talking to me?
I've had a wild story, interesting life, I think. Both of my parents are Palestinian. I was born in Chicago, raised here in Miami. You and I were chatting recently about my time in the Middle East. I spent 2 concurrent years there, once in 96 when I was in the 6th grade. Spent a year there. Was sent to live with my aunt and uncle. Nothing like the Bel Air experience. Very, very different. And then again, my senior year in high school, which was actually during the second Palestinian Intifada, which we got there right after the major fighting happened. But there was still quite a lot going on. And I remember seeing tanks rolling in front of our school and pancaking cars, and the smell of the bombs going off, and the smell stays with you probably more than anything.
Yeah, you posted something recently saying that if you've never had to live through the sounds of shelling or gunfire, then you've lived a good life. Something along those lines.
Congratulations, life's been pretty good to you.
Yeah.
It's, and not to discount whatever struggle that person may be having. It's not the only kind of struggle, but it's one that stays with you. And seeing these images out of Ukraine has been painful for me. I mean, I spent the first couple of days in tears. It's just awful. And then the other side of that coin is seeing the world being so empathetic towards this country and this invasion, whereas Palestinians have never really gotten that kind of treatment on an international stage.
Wow.
And so there's kind of a conflict there where it's like, I feel the same way everybody feels about this, but there's also almost a jealousy aspect where it's like, view us as the same humans, with the same thing happening.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just the media has manipulated the mentality of society into believing that, Israel is this, I guess, the birthplace of our Lord and Savior?
Right.
So therefore, Palestine is the evil, the antagonist to that. So let's just vote for these people, empathize with these people, but completely ignore the people of Palestine.
And I think when it comes to the citizens, I can easily have empathy to both sides. I don't really have a lot of empathy for any government on the planet. I hate them all very equally. And so it's easy for me to understand the terror that an Israeli citizen will go through when a rocket is fired at their town, right? These are not the people who are purposely doing this, right? But we don't hold the Israeli government accountable enough to the things they do. I mean, I just posted a video the other day of a girl the age of my oldest daughter getting punched around. I mean, if you can look at that image and be like, well, Israel has the right to defend itself, and you probably might want to take a look inwards there, because a 12-year-old child being beaten by a soldier is not something that anyone should endure.
Yeah. I was just, as you were talking, I was imagining, I've never, nor I hope I never have to worry about the building that I'm standing in or the bedroom that I'm sleeping in being shelled or being a missile ending up in my living room. I can't even imagine what that's like. And we're watching it in real time on TikTok and on Instagram and on Facebook, where people are showing like, hey, this is war. This is what war looks like up close and personal.
Right.
But we're still there.
I have a hard time understanding how we as humans haven't evolved past violence after all of this time. We're supposed to be smarter than we've ever been. We have so much access to so much information. And yet the barbaric acts still very prevalent, and we've almost become desensitized to it.
You think so? I mean, you're right. I'll give you an example. September 11th, right? I was in boot camp in the Army in September 11th. So I didn't have all those news flashes constantly thrown at me where people are jumping off of buildings, the planes hitting the buildings. I didn't see any of that.
Right.
I didn't see any of it until December. And I was sitting at my girlfriend's house at the time in high school in her living room. She had probably seen the images 30, 40, 50, 100 times. And here I am sitting, I'm watching it, and I'm crumbling from the couch onto the floor, almost in a near fetal position, holding my knees, watching like, what the fuck is going on? So I think we are desensitized to it. And the more those things are flashed at you, the more you just say, it's not happening to me, so it's irrelevant.
I don't even know if it's just the not happening to me. I even see it in my own kids with active shooter drills. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, where I still break down into tears every time they tell me they do this at school. And they're just kind of like chilling about it now. When they were younger, they'd be a little emotional, get in the car crying that this happened. And now they're all nonchalant. And I'm there like bawling. Like, how are you kids not crying right now?
Well, do you remember having those drills where you had to go underneath the table?
Yes, I do remember those.
That was interesting.
It was interesting, but I feel like less traumatic. Because I don't know if you're familiar with what they do during these drills, but there's teachers like pounding on the
Oh
doors.
no.
Like it's really like intense. And I can't imagine my 7-year-old like going through this.
But in order for them to not react the way that they would emotionally, it's important for them to make those sounds and kind of freak them out a little bit. So that way, the more of an adrenaline rush, the more of a sympathetic response that you get, where your heart rate's up, your blood pressure's up, your pupils are dilated, and you're ready to go. The more you're exposed to that, if it really happens, at least they're going to act a little bit more rationally. So, I mean, it's good, but I could see from a parent's perspective, like, why do we even have to go through this?
And I guess the question I have is how frequently, right? Because I can understand the exposure aspect and how that may help curb their emotional reaction. And then there's that line of like, how frequently? And I don't know how frequently they do it. For me, it's
one time is too much.
Yeah, for me, it's always going to be too many times. So.
I hear you. So wait, so you grew up, so you spent what years in Palestine?
So it was 96 and 2001. I was actually there on 9/11, which was a really strange experience for me.
Okay.
Because I remember the first person I ran into was one of my cousins. And of course, you know, the game of telephone of life is you know, always huge. And so I had just gotten out of school, as you got a 7-hour time difference. So it was early morning here on the East Coast, but it was the end of my school day over there. And the way he portrays it to me is that fighter jets went into New York, shot at buildings, and then ran into them. And
Which is like, exactly what happened.
And I was like, what the hell? And like, it sounded like Japanese soldiers in World War II type shit. Mm-hmm. Obviously not the case. And then when I got back home, BBC was actually the only channel I was able to get everything in English. And I was glued to that television for 3 days straight. And in that time, it was weird seeing the escalating tension in the region, roads being closed down, unable to go to school, had to literally walk through valleys to go to school, bullets over our heads, absolute fucking chaos. And I actually never actually graduated high school because of that year. Because by the time I got back, I wasn't able to transfer my papers. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And so I never actually graduated high school.
So you have a GED?
Yes.
That's awesome. You know what's crazy is before we even sat down, I was like, number one, life is good right now, right? At least for me, I can speak for myself, right? In the sense where I'm coming into work, I'm calling this work right now, this podcast,
right?
And I get to talk to. It's actually the only chance that I've had to really sit down with certain friends who you're always connected to from a distance,
right?
But you never make, for whatever reasons, you don't make the time, and this is a damn good excuse to make the time. So
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
But so you graduate high school, or you don't? You have your GED, and then what happens next?
I mean, I've never actually held a regular job. I've been an entrepreneur since I was essentially a child. I was working at the store with my dad at a very young age, and English is my dad's third language. So I was essentially the one running all of his businesses by the time I was in high school.
Wow.
Right after that, in about 2002, by then I was managing 3 commercial properties for him, 2 convenience stores. It was a lot. And so, this is just in my blood, has always been the entrepreneurial side, and then decided to part ways. And that's how Pincho got started back in 2010.
What is it about your culture, the Muslim culture in general, that seems to definitely make moves once they get to the United States?
Pride coming from not having, the little my father has given me in stories, like, it's a fucking rough life.
So it's like, let's make this easier, guys.
And it's taken me to now to kind of empathize with my upbringing and the way my father handled certain things and compare it to the way my grandfather handled things with him. It's like, yeah, of course he felt like he did the best he could. And you just try to push that envelope, but he had it rough. He had to leave school in the 7th grade. to help out with the family business. And so when he got here, he wanted to build a life where he was free, truly free. And that word comes in a lot of sense, and financial freedom is the ultimate form of freedom.
Yeah.
And now he's at a stage where every time I ask about him, at least pre-COVID, he was out on a cruise somewhere. And so I'm sure he's now happy that numbers are going down, because I know he's been dying to get out on one.
On a cruise again?
Yes.
I mean, me too. I just don't want to get on one right now.
I've actually never been on one.
You've never been on a cruise?
Never been on a cruise.
It's the easiest vacation you can ever take. If you just need an escape, if you just need to unplug from life just for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days is too long. I want 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect. Your phone doesn't work unless you pay for it. Everything's planned out for you. There's shows throughout the day. There's food. There's jacuzzi. There's a gym. It's nothing. It's just hang out and alcohol.
Sounds like
if you get an alcohol pass, but that's a different story too. This could go down a dark hole. So after managing your father's properties, when did Pincho Factory come into play?
2010.
Okay. Where was that birth? Where did Pincho Factory come from?
It was a drunken 4th of July joke. July 4th, 2010.
Okay.
I'm a bit patriotic. I like the 4th of July, so I would do these kind of big parties, lots of fireworks, and Otto, who is always late for everything, showed up basically when everything was over.
Okay.
So everyone was gone. We're just sitting on the couch hanging out with a couple of friends. Jasmine, my oldest, was 10 months old at the time. She's already sleeping. My brother was actually in Chicago on vacation. We start talking about this, and we're not completely sober, not sober at all, and so we're just going back and forth. And the next morning, I had a concept. I owned a location of Snappers Fish and Chicken on 79th Street and 18th Avenue.
You own this?
I used to.
Okay.
This was pre-Pincho, and then partner and I didn't really get along completely, and made a deal, sold the little bit that I owned of that, and used that for Pincho. I called Otto the next day, and I was like, "Hey, were you serious about what we're talking about?" He's like, "I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about." And the restaurant, whatever. My brother gets back, and I'm like, "Hey, we're opening a restaurant. We need all your money." That was exactly how the conversation went, like verbatim. And he was like, "All right, cool." We were babies, man.
Wait, if I told my brother, "Give me all your money, I'm going to open up a company," my brother's not going to comply.
I know your brother a lot more than I know that statement
is accurate.
Yeah, I can imagine some very colorful language. Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah, right. What are you talking? What the fuck? Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? Yeah.
Oh man. So me and Otto were 24, and Nizar was 19 when we started Pincho. I mean, we were babies who had no clue what we were doing. I was there for 7 years. I stepped down in 2018. We had a really fun run. I mean, it was one of the wildest times in my life. We ended up opening 14 locations, including a partnership at the then American Airlines Arena.
Wait, but let's rewind. You're just jumping through this like if it's this is how many years of your life?
7.
7 years.
7. The company's now 12 years old.
Okay.
And it all started on Bird Road and 98th. We should not have stayed in business.
Why do you say?
Our first entire year, we did a little over $200,000 in sales. And you don't need to be a mathematician to know that is not a good number for a restaurant.
How far were you in the red after the first year, if you're allowed to say?
Oh, I mean, completely. I was barely taking a salary. It was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. Thankfully, Otto, my brother, my wife, they were really supportive in trying to carry me through this. And somehow we were like, all right, things are not going great, but they're getting better. Let's open a second location.
Really?
And that's when Coral Gables came along, which was in the second year of Bird Road. And that ended up not only elevating the Coral Gables store and the brand, but even the original store shot up by about 50% that year.
Wow.
Just because of the overall exposure, people actually hearing about us.
Was it just more money in marketing, or was it just...
No, marketing money didn't come into play till much further down the line. But there was some spending. Also, social media, Facebook ads back then were very different.
Okay.
Your reach was unbelievable.
Really?
With $25, you reached half the city.
Damn it.
It was a very, very different time. I remember our first like Instagram boost. It was insane. I think we spent like $15, over 2,800 engagement. Like, it was insane. Today you have to spend, 20 times that.
We're just trying to figure it out. Honestly, we're trying to figure it out.
It's not easy. It's a very weird world in the social media realm. But we were in it in the perfect like Wild West times. Yeah. The algorithms weren't as smart. A lot of it was very geographical based, so that really helped us. And a big turning point for us, a very close friend and today partner in my new concept, guy by the name of Burger Beast walks into the restaurant. He writes about us. And that was really the first domino that kind of led to the snowball that became Pincho, the local chain.
Wow.
So after he wrote about us, I think it was Thrillist that caught wind second, and then the New Times, and then Channel 7, and then it was just this like, hey, this is a thing.
And you guys won Burger Bash a couple years in a row, right?
Not in a row, but we won it in 2015,
okay.
and then in 2019.
Yeah.
I was trying to be the first to win it with two different concepts last Friday, but we did not end up winning on Friday. But we had a great time.
That's cool.
And got to meet Jose Andres, who is the ultimate of humanitarian chefs out there. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you, speaking of Chef Andres, you're not a chef.
I am not a chef. I have not been classically trained at all.
But so did you have some sort of food background that helped you launch the original menu, or how did you develop the concept of what is Pincho? Because when you walk into it, like, the menu's pretty dope. So, like, how did you come up with this?
So I spent most of my childhood in kitchens, whether it was in the butcher shop at my dad's store, the cafeteria that was out there, or at family gatherings. There was a huge gathering at my parents' house on any given Sunday. I mean, just any day you'd walk in, 20 to 45 people at my parents' house. No invitation, no nothing. You just showed up, knocked. Maybe you brought something, maybe you didn't. If you're hungry, you open the fridge. It was a very...
But what type of cuisine?
Well, that was the fun part. It was... Yes, there was a lot of the Middle Eastern, but we had been living in South Florida long enough that some of the Hispanic plates started to end up being on our table as well. So, you'll see a braised lamb with black beans and
tostones. That's
amazing. And so it became this weird dynamic, and really the catalyst that got me interested in combining flavors. And then from a skill set part, YouTube. That's really where...
So you developed the menu yourself?
Well, I mean, it was group effort when Adrian, who's currently our director of culinary, came on board. He was the one who helped open Coral Gables. He and I have this insane chemistry together when it comes to food. Like, it's almost like a spouse where you'll finish each other's sentences. Uh-huh. He and I will finish each other's recipes without, like, missing a beat.
That's cool.
So if we're going in a certain direction, it's like, hey, you should add this in there. It's like, oh shit, you're right. Let's do this. And there was always a fun chemistry there. My brother and I, when I would close really late, he'd come and just hang out with me for a little while, and then we'd kind of banter on that and go back and forth on different stuff. And a lot of the creativity really came from necessity. It wasn't the intention of the brand to be a burger joint or to be like, we tried to lean in on simplicity originally. We only had 8 menu items. But
like a Chipotle style menu, or what kind of menu?
Kind of. Uh-huh. So there was the build your own bowls type of deal, and we had the pita wraps, and then there was one burger on there just because. Okay. Right. And then, we needed the attention, and we saw that whenever we did something with a burger, we got a little bit more attention. And so that became the incentive, right? And
What's the wildest thing that you did with a burger?
Oh man, we did a lot of wild stuff with burgers. We've done peanut butter sandwiches as buns, grilled cheese as buns, the Tostón burger, which is now kind of what we're known for,
Yeah, it's
right?
a
It's a
staple.
staple. For a while, we had a pastelito burger, which was 2 guava pasteles as the buns with queso blanco on
How's that?
It's actually better than it sounds. I know it sounds a little repulsive. And it was kind of the Miami version of the Luther burger, which is the 2 Krispy Kreme donuts.
Oh, I've seen that. No. But I've had guava on a burger. It's the Frita burger that's at Kush.
I actually haven't had that one.
It's called the Frita burger. Dude, it's guava. It's a regular burger just with some guava.
Nice.
It's legit. So, just
And
in case.
the funny part, I normally don't eat very like wild burgers. Like I like a plain burger. Just give me bread, meat, and cheese. And whenever I tell people that, they always kind of look at me sideways, like you're known for doing all of this. And it was like, yeah, I did that out of necessity, and I just happened to get really good at it. I like a good old plain burger.
I like a burger with no cheese. So there you go. But it needs lettuce, tomatoes, ketchup, mayo. No cheese, man. I'm sorry.
Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry this interview's done. Guys, have a great day.
It's not the first time.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
I've
right
had
now.
waiters get offended and be like, "What do you mean no cheese?" I'm like, "I don't want cheese on my burger. It takes away from the burger." He's like, "No, it enhances the experience."
I can't fathom
No cheese?
I can't fathom no cheese.
Now as I've gotten older, I can do like some mozzarella, but always like a salty cheese, soft cheese. I don't know, white cheese. But anyhow, I'm not a cheese connoisseur. Like you asked me about last night. I poured Camus into a beer mug. People were so offended.
I responded. I'm calling the police.
Yeah. They're like, "That's Camus." I was like, "It was a gift. I've never had Camus before, but here we go."
Wine.
It's a good wine. But anyhow, let me move forward. It's just it's interesting to sit here with you because these are all conversations. I think the first time you contacted me was over 5 years ago, and it was questions about helping. It was about my work with the homeless population, and I think you wanted to do something through Pincho.
Yes,
to help the homeless.
We were trying to do a kind of training program, and there was no requirement that they worked with us. It was basically kind of developing a almost a certification style process, teaching basic skills, knife skills, etc. in the kitchen to give people the tools to get hospitality jobs.
Cool.
And then, as is life, sometimes you get caught up in the growth and everything else that the business demands that we were never able to really get that off the ground. But you're right. That was the first time I think that we.
Yeah. Besides high school, like you just reached out to me. I even remember where I was driving. I was somewhere in Davie, and we were speaking over the phone. But that's been in your heart for a long time to help.
Absolutely.
Right? Why? Why do you have this desire to help people? And we'll talk about your nonprofit now.
Life experience is really the only way I can describe it. I watched my dad help as much as he could. He was always a really generous person. And growing up in that store, I was overly exposed to news, current events, and everything going on in the world, right? There was no smartphones. I had no entertainment when I was there. So I read the newspaper every day. And so talking about when I was 9, 10 years old, like the 93 crime bill, I was born in 84. So I was 9 years old reading about the mandatory minimums and the year following with the...
Wait, you were born in?
84.
84, okay.
So I was 9 years old, reading about this legislation and what's going on. I remember the war in Kosovo by memory. I remember I think it was 94 that we had the first assault weapons ban. Mm-hmm. I remember the front of the Herald kind of breaking down the components of what defines an assault rifle. So there was a lot of exposure to a lot of misery at a really young age. And then also, I'm sure that the people in that neighborhood, a lot of old Cuban exiles who I would speak to about communism and Cuba and all of this stuff. And these were the conversations I was having, between the age of 9 and 17.
Gotcha.
And so that drove a type of empathy in me where I feel like there are too many issues in this world that we can solve and we choose to put Band-Aids on. And, a lot of it, I thought my frustrations were on the government side, and I for a long time really wanted to pursue a career in politics.
Good luck.
Well, it was actually 2 podcast episodes that changed my mind on that subject. It was Andrew Yang interviewing Justin Amash. And he was the only libertarian in Congress at the time, or basically the only person who wasn't part of the 2 major political parties. And he outlined how he essentially was unable to get a single thing done in there. The way the rules are written, it doesn't allow for dissenting voices. And same podcast ends up interviewing a woman by the name of Catherine Gale, where I was introduced to the concept of Final Five voting, which is a fascinating topic that focuses a lot on breaking down the incentive structure of money in politics. Rather than trying to fight it, it more so increases the value of the vote versus the value of dollars in elections.
Okay.
How
do you do that?
A couple ways. So it outlines open primaries first and foremost. The way the primaries are set up currently, I can't vote for either party when it comes to a primary because I learned very young that I'm not registering to either of them. Mm-hmm. So I can't participate in what's actually the most important part of the election.
Because you're registered as independent.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And particularly when it comes to state politics, mm-hmm. right? Because most of the time, particularly here in Florida, doesn't matter who's in the general. What really matters is those primaries because those races are won by these insane margins.
Gotcha.
So with a system like a Final Five, you have a multitude of candidates you can choose from. And you're also, on the second round, you're ranking them rather than voting for one. So we hear a lot where it's like, oh, a vote for this person or a vote for a third party is a vote for that other person. Well, that's because of the way the system's been essentially rigged, right? Whereas if you could rank, then you no longer feel that throwaway vote where you would rank your number 1, the person you would probably connect to the most, and then your second choice, and you would rank them 1 through 5. It currently passed a similar system in Alaska, and New York City's most recent mayoral race was done on similar platforms.
New York City's doing great, by the way. So just putting that out there.
Well, I would say, Eric Adams hasn't had enough time just yet. I do think it's a low bar. He's got to do better than Blasio, but that's,
It's funny because I was registered independent not too long ago, and now is when this is when Erica, that girl back there, she's going to quit because I went ahead and registered as a Democrat. That's right.
I can't get myself to register to either party.
No, you tell me right now that I'm a registered Democrat, and I think it's funny to say it out loud in a party because everybody turns around and looks like you're a communist.
Especially in this state, yes.
It's so interesting, but it's like, dude, it doesn't matter which side you register for. You still, if you're an intelligent human, you can still look at the information. I lean left because I believe in a lot of philosophies about helping people that are living on the margins,
right?
People that need a hand, kids that need some sort of development outside of the home as they grow up, parents who need assistance for the right reasons.
Right.
Now, can that system be abused and manipulated? Absolutely. Can that money be funded to places where it shouldn't be? 100%. Do I also believe in the need for people to work, to find a sense of purpose and productivity, and to help themselves? Of course.
Right.
So it's a balance. So I don't care which side you're registered on. At the end of the day, you can still process the information, what's being thrown at you. And I'm not going to lean way left, and I'm not going to lean way right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm one of the conundrums in the voting world. I'm sure if somebody were to analyze my voting record, they'd be completely confused. Like this last one, I voted for Marco Rubio and for Joe Biden. On the same ticket. Right? That's a very confusing ballot. But I was not prepared for an additional 4 years of Trump. Little did I know that we were going to get this dumpster fire with the Biden administration, and I just feel like we were destined for dumpster fires no matter what.
Either way.
After post-COVID.
People will be really angry at this. I'm going to turn this little section into a reel. Just play it over and over. Ooh, it's going to get some traction.
It's, I know there are some people out there who say, oh, none of this would be happening if Trump was in office. And like, I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
You have no clue.
And I can give credit to the few things that Trump got right, and I've given credit to Biden on the few things. I think he's gotten 4 things right this entire year.
His name, his date of birth.
So funny enough, one thing that he got right, and the media managed to completely destroy what actually was happening, the whole handing out crack pipes. This program was actually one of the 3 or 4 good things this administration has done.
So tell them why, because a lot of people, the same thing as there's a needle exchange program that exists here in downtown.
Right.
So if you can't explain why that's a good idea and how it was twisted or manipulated.
Well, so the headlines, and this is what really got me, Biden administration hands out crack pipes in the name of racial justice. Okay. And if that sounds like an Onion article, that's because whoever wrote it has the journalistic integrity of a Onion writer.
Clickbait.
Okay. Because it was so to separate the two, one, I mean, the actual grant program does not mention crack pipes a single time. It's more so grants for municipalities and nonprofit organizations that help with either it's from the Department of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, SAMHSA.
SAMHSA. Okay, yes. SAMHSA, yeah.
So these were grants from SAMHSA that were going out that helped with either curbing overdoses, sexually transmitted diseases. So it was $400,000 grants, up to $400,000 per organization that were helping mitigate these issues. And so, people think of whether it be a needle exchange program or a clean smoking kit as enabling, when in reality, we've had enough data from Portugal now, who has decriminalized all of these drugs and treats them medically rather than as a criminal offense. And 55 overdoses is what that entire country had last year. That's of a population of a little over 10 million, so about the size of North Carolina, who had about 2,000 overdoses last year. So the disparity in the way we're handling it versus everybody else, or at least versus this country, is huge. And so we should take notes on what these countries are doing and what's working, because clearly sending people to jail is not curbing any drug use.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with people regarding, let's say, again, the needle exchange program that exists here, which is called the Idea Exchange, because people right away are just saying, oh, you're giving out free needles, and that's going to enable people who are drug users. Therefore, they're just going to use more, and they're going to use, in a way that's reckless, because they know that they have access to Narcan, which is a reversal agent for opioids. So they're going to use more and know that their life can still be saved. I'm like, well, no. There's multiple reasons why there are what's called either risk reduction programs or places where people can use and be observed while using. Number one is you're giving this person the opportunity to just, for one, to come out from the shadows, right, and be open about their drug use. Number two, it gives the healthcare provider the opportunity to say, hey, these are some of the harms that are involved, right? So you use techniques of motivational interviewing, which include just education and letting them know that there are other options. You kind of ask them, do you have any interest in getting off of this, right? Is there any desire for change?
Right.
And so the more that people are exposed, the more that they realize, like, oh shit, there is help for me. And then what else was it? So if they have an infection, right? So right away we can say, hey, let's get that infection treated. It doesn't look good. So again, you're offering them help, providing education, and you're constantly touching base. You're giving them clean needles instead of them using needles that they got from their neighbor or whoever else. So you're reducing disease that comes from unsafe needle use. So I mean, I could go on and on, but at the end of the day, you are saving, because people always want to argue. Look, I can argue and be a bleeding heart every day and tell people how we need to help humanity. But when you're giving an argument to a board, you need to show them numbers.
Right.
You need to show cash flow. And you need to say, hey, we're actually going to save the city, the county, the hospital system this X amount of dollars by implementing this program, which only costs this amount. And then that's where the marketing came. The world is so weird. No, as I say this out loud, it's bizarre to me because I have to convince people through dollars in order to save lives, right? Damn, that's fucking ass backwards.
It is. It is a weird way to look at the world.
But it's how I had to learn that. Look, I have freaking goosebumps. I had to learn that the human life doesn't have the value when you compare it to the money in some circumstances. And it's like, what? But this is the world we live in. And unless you can convince somebody that the dollars make sense, then the lives don't matter. What the fuck? This sounds like a great soundbite, but it's not. I'm just speaking from my heart right now.
No, it is mind-boggling.
It's weird.
Dr. Cornel West is involved in something called the People's Party, who I think is attempting to be another kind of political party. And I saw something they posted the other day that said the phrase "earn a living" implies that you don't deserve to be alive in the first place. That was a really strange thing to read.
You gotta earn it, bro.
Right? And yes, life is hard, and you know, we're never gonna be in this utopia where we can sip margaritas all day. As nice as it sounds, it's just never gonna happen.
Yeah. And you wouldn't feel good about it either way.
I probably would, to be honest with you. I've had the lived experiences of a 90-year-old at this stage. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm ready.
You're ready.
Like, I am totally ready to just retire. I'm lying. I cannot stay still. I'm talking shit.
Yeah. Why can't you sit still? Because there's a sense of productivity that actually gives you life. When you have a sense of purpose and you feel driven towards something, then you have a sense or a desire to get up every day and go do it. Because if you don't have that sense of purpose, then what? You're aimless. You're just wandering.
Oh, and I've gotten down there a couple of times in the last couple of years, particularly during COVID when I lost a little over half of my net worth.
Gotcha.
And the term ambition means a lot of different things for me today than it did back when we were growing Pincho, because that was a different type of ambition. I wanted one on every corner I could see. The first day that I walked into the arena and saw our logo spinning on the Jumbotron minutes before LeBron James hits the court, like that's an adrenaline rush like nothing else.
Yeah.
Whereas today I look and I'm like, how can I actually solve a problem that this world has, or at least lay the groundwork for somebody in the next generation to finish that work and truly solve this? Mm-hmm. I look at my kids now and I worry about the world that they're going to live in. It's become a lot less about my accomplishments and more so leaving something that they'll be proud of and a life that they won't feel like a lot of our generation feels right now. I mean, these kids, I think about my youngest, she was pulled out of school in the beginning of the pandemic out of pre-K. And she would cry every single night for her teacher. And it was wild, like this connection that she had with her and just the being stuck at home. And this is going to have a lot of lasting effects on these kids as they grow. We actually have all three of our girls in therapy. And, you know, we want them to process this at young of an age as humanly possible to try to help them, you know, move past it. Me as an adult who's been couch surfing on therapists' couches for 11 years now, I still have a hard time processing it all. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine what these little minds are going through with the masks and the original closures and stay away from that person. And it's like so weird. Yeah. So weird at such a young age.
It was, I mean, it concerns me just because I see it in my daughter too with the mask. Like at first she didn't even like, okay, mask, you don't need a mask anymore, but she still wants to wear it or kind of wear it and kind of hide with it.
Right.
And I have to tell her, Eva, please just take off the mask. Like, we're good. Like, we're in the car now. Like,
Yeah.
we're
I have the same. They get into the car, they keep it on. I'm like, what are you girls doing? Come on.
yeah. We live in the same house. Like, there's nothing happening in the car. But
And I've had conversations with my wife and them about even going to school without it. It's like all of them have had COVID. We're looking at these numbers. We're done.
What?
Can we ring the fucking bell here? We're done.
What's crazy for me is that for somebody who's in the medical field to now have skepticism towards research and towards studies and towards what information is actually put out to the public and how it's put out to the public, that worries me, because how do I know who's going to have or who's going to conduct research that is accurate, that is completely objective, when we're talking about long-term studies on kids and what kind of effect this has had on our children? It has to. I'm sure it has had some sort of effect, especially if you're between the ages, like let's say before 12 or even 15. I mean, 25 years old, it's affected all of us. But how has this time affected kids where all of a sudden they went from being in school, being in a regular classroom, to learning how to adapt at home, which was also cool. Did your kids ever do Zoom groups on their own where they would do work together? So
yes.
My daughter had classwork, and I was like, wait, did your teacher tell you to do this? And they figure it out on their own. They were just
they adapt.
They adapt.
And that's one thing about kids is they will find a way. But it also is going to have an effect on it. It has to.
I'm curious. I wonder how much, like, is it truly going to have a major impact on any of our son? I'm sure yes, but I don't know if on all. I just don't know what those effects will be. I could speculate. I could tell you they're going to be more socially isolated. I could tell you that they're going to have understand less social cues, especially because they're already trapped on their phones to begin with. But is that true?
I'm still going strong. My 12-year-old does not have a phone.
Mine too. We're on the same page, bro.
Holding on strong. I'm not ready for social media. I'm not ready for any of that. Like, the entire concept of social media is pretty wild, and it's got to be messing with our collective psyche.
It's messing with mine. I can tell you that.
You're scrolling through, and it's like, oh, look, cute dog. Oh, look, they had a baby. That's awesome. Congratulations. Woman on a squat rack. That's definitely interesting. Yeah. And then genocide. What the fuck?
Yeah.
What just happened, bro? Like, I was just having a good old time, and now, like, I've got to read about this genocide. And then you can't scroll away from that. Like, oh, shit, what the hell's going on? And so, it's this weird reactions happening in our brains all the time. I've come to now, like, tailor my feeds, whether it comes to YouTube. I've removed Facebook from my phone. And with Instagram, I started using that mute button so much now.
Just to mute different, whatever certain people are putting out. Well, what are some things that you don't want to hear about or read about?
It's not necessarily the things that I don't want to read about. I don't mind being informed. Like, I'm the type of person, I subscribe to independent journalists and pay them directly because I trust them as a source. So I want the information, but what I don't want is, like, the groupthink and the people who are, like, great examples that are blaming this Russian invasion on Biden, right? It's like, dude, there's 7 million things we could talk about this guy is getting wrong. A midget invading Ukraine is not one that's Biden's fault. Mm-hmm. So it's just that as a group, human beings can be really dumb. Individuals can be really smart. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some really smart people I know say some really stupid things mm-hmm. online. And that's some of the stuff that I try to, like,
just filter out.
Filter out.
I actually haven't been watching Nedal, I'm so ignorant right now when it comes to geopolitical affairs. Like, Erica's the one who updates me all the time, but otherwise I've turned it out. I've tuned it out.
So October through about last week, I was really limiting the news. And my overall television consumption, I'm down to less than 3 hours TV a week. And Ukraine was kind of what sucked me back in. I was like, I need to understand more because I understand the global implications that this can have. If you think inflation's bad now, give it a week. There's a lot that's going to be affected by this. And, let's just pray it doesn't get to the ultimate worst, which is a potential nuclear war. Because
I'm looking forward to it.
we got shit to do. I don't have nuclear war scheduled in my calendar, so if we could avoid that, please, that would be very grateful.
That would be beneficial to us all. I just don't even, again, I make myself ignorant to it because I feel like I have no control over it. So there was a point in time where I was very invested in politics and what was going on. And right now, I can say I'm pretty damn ignorant. I know the bare minimum.
It's okay to stay ignorant on the national level. I would implore you on a local and state level to try to be more informed.
What are some things?
That's the politics that affects our everyday real lives.
Oh, I've seen
National politics affects us a lot less. It is nothing but the WWE. And that's really what Congress and DC has become. It's the WWE, the president, whoever is the Vince McMahon of those 4 to 8 years. And that's just how it all goes down. And then you have a media structure that is incentivized to make us hate each other to watch the WWE more.
That's true. You're right.
It's Matt Taibbi has a book called Hate Inc. that I recommend to anybody who will listen to me. You will look at every article you see online differently after you read that book. And what
it's just made to make us hate one another and just to make that line.
Yep. Because that's ultimately what sells. Because we are the product. We are not the consumer with these companies. And so they want us outraged because that's what gets engagement. Right? So to tie back to the Biden crack pipe thing, telling a story that the substance, SAMHSA is handing out these grants to help communities and prioritizing the money to communities of color. That's not a sexy story that's going to get 6,000 shares. Mm-hmm. Crack pipes in the name of racial justice. Share, right? And so that's the unfortunate side of social media and mass virality.
So you as an entrepreneur right now, if you want to drive more business, or if you want to just gain more business through social media marketing, what technique do you use?
I've always tried to include community engagement in what we do. Mm-hmm. So the restaurant we haven't talked about is the one I'm currently running, which is called Crackers in Miami Springs. So we're currently rolling out a program to essentially eliminate teachers from using their own money for supplies. I think it's the most ridiculous thing on the planet, and it's a relationship that will benefit both of us. So we're in the process of putting together everything on our website now. By the time this airs, it'll probably be live. And essentially what we're doing, because we tried it in the past in my career, and dealing with the school system is not easy, even when you're trying to give them money.
Really?
Yeah, you would think that would be a simple thing to do. It's not. So we're going a little bit more of a simpler route where it's a simple contact form on our site. Send us your name, which school you're at, grade level, and a link to your Amazon wish list. We send you a flyer. You send your parents, friends, family, everybody, the date that we assign to your class. Come in, and then we're going to donate 15% of the sales, and then we're going to just buy it on your Amazon wish list.
Nice.
So there's none of the paperwork that needs to go with, writing a check to a school or any of that, and avoiding teachers spending out of pocket for supply, which saying that out loud sounds so ridiculous.
Every one of my friends who were teachers after graduating high school, graduating college, are no longer teachers. And these are all quality people who I would want instructing my kids. But the reason that they have left is because of no incentives, lack of pay, right? Because they all loved what they were doing, but they couldn't sustain their life based on the salary that a teacher was earning.
Right. And I would bet a huge portion of them was probably also the way parents now react towards teachers when it comes to their kids' performance.
Of course.
I see it a lot at my kids' school, and it frankly mortifies me, where it's like our oldest got in trouble probably for the first time ever about a week ago for a uniform violation. And my wife gets the call, and she's like, "Oh, we're so sorry." Like, no, like, freaking punish her.
Yeah.
Like, she's real. Like, everybody loves her in that school. She's been a straight A student since she got into the school system. But I want her to understand that there's consequences to her actions. Like this sheltering that a lot of parents try to do and intervene and like, why is my kid like, oh man,
suck it up. Learn.
They've got to learn. They've got to have responsibility, and they've got to learn that their actions have consequences. And sometimes it sucks. And we try not to overreact to that at home as well, so that they understand that we're here to support, we're here to help and push you through this. But I can't imagine, like, on top of the pay, the lack of incentive, the understaffing, the not having the resources, the tools, and then on top of that, having to spend your own money, and then this parent complaining to you about their child's performance. It's like,
I'm out.
That's a rough gig, man.
Yeah, definitely.
And in my opinion, it's a gig that needs to pay at least six figures, because my wife was in Venezuela for 2 weeks, and I was with the girls alone in that period of time. And, yeah, anybody choosing that profession to spend that many hours with all of our children, that's a six-figure gig. Like, that's can't even start below that.
No, what they're earning right now is garbage, honestly.
I know. It's absolute insanity.
I think you would definitely you would encourage a lot more people to want to be teachers if the pay was better. I think it's a pretty cool job. Like, you get to teach kids, help them grow up, teach them, instill values in them, and can actually help them look at the world in a more critical way. But the way the school system is set up also is you got to follow this teaching plan, and these are the rules, and this is how you teach, and this is how you say it. So it almost becomes robotic to some. It doesn't allow you to think critically.
Right.
How did you get into, so you're trying to help teachers right now, but I think you skipped over all of COVID because you you had another business that was going during COVID, didn't you?
Yes, I had a meal delivery service that lasted nothing. So after I stepped down from Pincho, I had franchised the location in Doral.
And I'm gonna. So did you first? Because you mentioned that you lost half of your net worth. Was that with Pincho, or was that after?
So it was a Pincho franchise location. So
Gotcha.
It was after I stepped down. I still own a small stake in the parent company.
Gotcha.
But I had the location in Doral as a franchisee with some partners. Really messy situation, a lot that I can't completely talk about, but it was not great for me because I was stuck in between being a franchisee and a founder of the brand. And so, took it on the chin and took a huge loss there, and was hoping that with the meal delivery service at the time, I had lost 70 pounds, and I'm a bit of a stickler for flavor in my food. So I basically taught myself this entire new skill set of making healthier food taste really good.
Okay.
And so I was like, maybe this will catch on. And, we did okay for a little bit, but even with cutting the rent in half at the location and everything that we did, there was just no keeping that concept alive.
And why? What were some of the things that you ran into that didn't allow that to prosper?
We just weren't able to achieve critical mass. There's so much going on in the world that no matter how much we spent on social media, we weren't getting the reach. I mean, what was going on at the time? Let's see.
Middle of COVID.
So we had COVID. We had the 2020 election. So the ad buys on social from politicians was absolutely insane. The world was essentially on fire, and I don't think anybody really gave a shit about eating healthy, because the messages we were also getting was just stay inside and don't do anything. So, we had a lot that was kind of an uphill climb. We also stayed away from any sort of diet culture terminology or anything that was kind of in the calorie counting realm, where it was most of our sales were in kind of family style meals where it's this, larger tub of cauliflower gallo pinto or roasted veggies, roasted chicken breast, salmon, etc. And you chose your portions. And that was a weird concept for people because they were used to, well, here's your meal plan. You're going to eat this on Monday morning and this on. And the reality is those are not sustainable. So we were trying to give people the tools to have a more sustainable, healthy lifestyle, to be able to prolong it. But unfortunately, the marketing around that industry has drilled into you that, well, women should only eat 1,200 calories a day, which is like what a 4-year-old needs, I think, according to a dietitian friend of mine who always keeps me informed. Shout out to Monica on that. She helped me on the Get Real Meal side on structuring that menu properly.
That's what it was called, Get Real Meals?
Get Real Meals, yeah.
Okay. So that no longer exists now?
No, that was April 2022 is when we closed it. I think we opened in like December of 2020. It lasted nothing, unfortunately.
So you've gone from managing properties that were your father's,
Yep,
to founding Pincho,
yep,
to stepping down, having some issues there, but then founding Get Real Meals.
yep.
That failed. Is that okay? Is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah, it failed miserably.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure.
Colossal failure. It was, and I openly say, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, don't say that." It's like, no, man, that's okay.
That's awesome.
It didn't work. Like, and obviously, it's not okay in the sense that I lost a shit ton of money. It sucks, but
course.
I'm all right with admitting that I failed at something. I've failed a million times, and that's how I got here. And you should fear failure, because that keeps you on your toes and you're back against the wall and keeps you wanting to grind. But at the same time, there comes a time where you have to look at it and be like, this shit's dead.
It's dead. So you got to take it
It's
out.
time to fold it.
Yeah, take it out back.
And then the other part, because I've been basically bad luck Brian since the beginning of COVID, we qualified under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund for $700,000, which would have completely put me back on my feet. And the fund ran out of money before we were able to get any in, so we saw $0.
Wow.
And then there was a FOIA request, so everybody who got that money was published information, and I made the mistake of looking and filtering by Miami and seeing what some companies got, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ.
People were just raping the system.
I don't know. I actually no.
No?
No,
So then
because
what do you mean by
the math was very clear.
Okay.
The issue was the threshold I think was too high, because it was up to 5 million. Whereas I think if they kept that threshold closer to 1 million, they probably could have helped a lot more companies. So seeing a bar get $5 million stings a little bit. But ultimately, they had days to put this program together, and there's so much going on. But I wish they had turned out. I wish Congress would have replenished the fund, which they did not have the political capital to do. So we were left out of that.
And didn't you? And again, weren't you involved with Legacy at one point?
So that was right before COVID. It was when that Pincho store was happening, and then I was supposed to be involved in the Doral location. And then that Pincho unit just ended up derailing just about everything for me.
Wow. So how does somebody like yourself, who is an entrepreneur, you've been through these different businesses, when things fail, when you lose half of your net worth, when a company that you think can really take off in the middle of COVID just dies, how do you bounce back from that?
I'm not quite sure the answer to that. I mean, for me, I've got kids. I have to provide for them one way or another. They didn't ask to be here. We made them. So that responsibility is a big one. I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't lose the will to live back then.
Yeah.
I wasn't suicidal, but, occasionally driving, it's like, oh, I wonder if this bridge would just collapse.
Yeah.
It was like wild thoughts like that. And I genuinely didn't want to live.
Yeah.
Also didn't want to kill myself.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but it was rough.
It's part of depression. They're called passive death wishes. Your brain goes into basically just, you want to shut down.
Yeah.
And you want it. I always tell people, your brain in those times of high stress wants fight or flight.
Yep.
And sometimes your brain says flight, and the ultimate flight is death.
Right.
Not necessarily, you have a lot of incentives to help keep you on this earth. Your desire to move forward, your family, your kids. I'm sure your desire to turn things around, but sometimes people don't have those support structures, and that's when
it was in that I start taking inventory one day of why I should live. And not a single one of those reasons pertained to myself, which really concerned me at the time. It was really strange thought to come to, where I thought about my parents, I thought about my children, my wife, my siblings. My siblings and I are really close. The 5 of us are essentially one human being. Even the younger ones from my dad's second marriage. I'm the oldest of 9.
Wow.
We're really close. And like, I think about all of this dynamic, went through the whole list, and like, it was then that I started getting into weird hobbies just to try to explore like what I wanted to do.
Like what?
Hydro dipping was one of them. I'm actually wearing one of my experiments from back then.
What's hydro dipping?
It's essentially transferring paint through water. So you spray paint the top of water, and when you dip through, you'll get this kind of weird funky effect with the colors. So this was the shit I was doing while watching Tiger King. So the bottom of these shoes are, these are a little rough because I've been wearing them for the last couple of weeks now. But
so that can't be replicated. Like you're not gonna, if
you're never gonna get the same shoe twice.
I got you. Okay.
So that was a little fun. I would do my phone case and things like that, and just play around with random stuff. More recently, music has become a big one for me. Started learning the piano. I'm really bad. Really, really, really bad. I cannot figure out not just the 2 hands, but then the fingers doing things. It's really weird. But still trying. But yeah, that was ultimately, I don't know, when was it that the idea for Heal For Us came about, but sometime in the last few months, where I decided that the nonprofit sector is really where I want to end my career. Still running Crackers now, and I want to give that a good run and open about 5 of those.
So wait, Crackers has been a staple in Miami Springs for a long time, right?
Yeah, so the concept was open in 2012.
Okay.
So this would have been their 10-year anniversary. It was actually February would have been their 10-year anniversary. And after Get Real failed, I was actually out applying for jobs at nonprofit organizations. Applied at Arc Broward, which I thought was a really interesting program. They do they're a culinary school for people with special needs. And I thought that was a really interesting space where I could use my skill set and make a difference. Applied at Feeding South Florida, looked around at a bunch of other stuff.
What role were you applying under?
Feeding South Florida was procurement. Procurement of food. I do have some knowledge in that space. I did a lot of the purchasing for Pincho when we were at 14 locations. Sourcing food is a absolute pain in the ass.
I can imagine.
And I can't imagine doing it for a large scale company in this environment today. Like, it's wild out there. But yeah, I was really running away from the restaurant industry. And then my friend Seth and I, we were talking. We've always wanted to do something together. He had a burger concept that he had been wanting to get off the ground. And seeing all the patterns in COVID, I was like, we got to do this as a drive-through. And let's essentially create the in and out of the East Coast. We'll keep it a really simple menu. We can dish it out really quickly, and I think we can make it a success. We weren't able to find any locations that were even in the realm of our fundraising capabilities. One needed to just be leveled completely and built from scratch. Would have required anywhere between $2 to $4 million to get that project off the ground. Out of the question. Start looking at a bunch of other places. Nothing is really catching on. And he's like, let me show you this spot. It's been for sale for a little bit. Nobody's really biting, but let's just go have lunch. The worst that happens is we had lunch, you're not interested, and we move on. Pull up to this space, and it's got this giant tiki hut up front, small little old building. And then I walk up onto the deck, and I see this like nice garden area out in the back. And before we even sat down, I was like, this is how I want to spend the next few years. Like, this is the place. And he's like, are you serious? Like, you haven't even tried anything. I was like, I don't care what the food's going to be like. I know I can fix that. This place is fucking awesome. And so we just kind of ran with it. We had a deal done within 45 days with them. Transition was relatively smooth, and then things kind of went haywire with, we weren't really handed a kind of system and recipes and all of that stuff. It was very mom and pop shop at the time. So we very much were learning as we went, and did all of the cosmetic remodeling without closing.
Wow.
Which was absolutely bananas. So very stressful month and a half there that we went through and still going through. But it's come out great. I'm in love with the end result. Food's at its best, and we just had our record week last week, which is great.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
That's huge.
So we're having a lot of fun with it. Live music on Fridays. I was just talking to the team about allowing kind of either a Wednesday or Thursday night where a local artist could just come and just riff around, and just kind of an open mic type of night. Not necessarily open mic if you want to play your guitar or keys, whatever, just something to get that creative juice out there. I wanted it to be a space where not just people ate, but people gathered. We have a big enough space to where, other than Sundays, you can kind of linger for a while.
Okay.
Please don't linger on Sundays. It's madness. Like, eat, get out, have your mimosas, and just go. But any other day, hang as long as you'd like.
Yeah, I've been to Crackers I think twice in my life, but now I'm definitely gonna go. Did you change the menu? They had some cinnamon toast crunch pancakes or something like that, right?
The Captain Crunch French toast.
French toast. There you go. I knew it was something like that.
Still one of the top sellers, and we haven't really touched that recipe. We've made some changes, and we're about to roll out a brand new menu that'll have brunch all day, or at least a limited brunch all day. So the Captain Crunch French toast will be available day and night almost every day. What else is on there? I believe our hash is on there, fried chicken and eggs. So it's it's become a fun menu, but really more so a fun place to gather. We have a lot of in our garden bridal showers, baby showers, birthday parties. So it's become a place, or it's always been a place to gather. We've just kind of made it a little newer and nicer.
Have you had difficulty with staffing? Because I know that's been a lot of talk.
We are overstaffed.
Oh, you're overstaffed?
We are overstaffed. I was considered a pariah in the restaurant industry for a little bit when the staffing issues really got heated. And, I would post my perspective on social media. I didn't have any operations at the time, so most of the responses were, fuck off, you don't see what we're going through. But I could see the writing on the wall, and I could see what was happening. People are just staying home. Well, that's humanly impossible. There's unemployment benefits. Yeah, that lasted, 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. Didn't drag on that long. And I think that was a larger scale version of what happened in Stockton, where people said, I've got this little bit of money. I'm going to pivot my own life the same way that these companies have pivoted, and I want to do something that means more to me. When you look at entrepreneurship in kind of 20-year-olds, it's at an all-time high. People want that kind of freedom that comes with entrepreneurship. And let's be honest, the restaurant industry is not a very glamorous one. Yeah. And so I don't blame people when they say, I want to get out of this to do something else. And I tried having these conversations with people, and nobody was really receiving that message. And so, yes, we pay really well, and we have a structure that allows for a certain amount of flexibility. We're still working on getting better at that, but ultimately the people that work with us love working with us. And so there's something deeper going on in the mass exodus of every industry, right? Because it's not just limited to restaurants. We were just having the conversations about teachers. Mm-hmm. Half of my friends who are nurses are saying like they want out. And it's really just a realignment of like, what's really important to me? How do I want to spend my time?
How do I want to live my life?
Yeah.
Right. Because I can tell you, in the middle of COVID, I think a lot of people had some sort of an existential crisis where they were either looking in the mirror at themselves, looking at their family situation, or looking at their profession and saying, wait, what's going on? Or this needs to be fixed, or we need to address this. So for some people, did it lead to look, I got laid off, right? I was working at the University of Miami, and I got the boot, let's be honest. Like you're fired.
That was wild. I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, on June 1st, 2020, and I've told this story before, but June 1st, 2020, I get a Zoom call, and I thought it was to discuss what was going to happen the next semester, because typically they let you know, oh, this is what you're going to teach next semester. These are your hours. These are your clinical sites. This is the amount of students you're going to have. So, get on the Zoom call. And as soon as the Zoom opens, it's not just my immediate boss, but it's my immediate boss, the lady from HR, and the associate dean from the school. The dean of the school. And I'm thinking,
oh, that's it.
This is not a good sign. When the lady from HR and the dean is there along with your boss, it's like, all right, well. So
message received before you even say anything.
I looked. It's so weird to look at that Zoom screen, and I remember I was literally reviewing to lecture that evening, and as I looked up, they start reading off a script. As of June 1st, 2020, your contract with the University of Miami is being terminated, and that's all. After that was just mumble. And then I just looked at them and said, "Guys, today's June 1st. Today is June 1st. Do I lecture today? Like, what are you saying?" No, as of right now. It's like, wow. And I'm not even sure how many people. I wasn't even too worried about myself. There were other people who had been at the university as administrative assistants, working there for 30 years. Where do they go? Like, I have a license that allows me to practice elsewhere. I was able to pivot and open this practice. Now I have a podcast. Don't ask me how this happened. But here we are. So I think it either forced you to pivot in a sense, or you had the opportunity to reevaluate what is it I really want to do with my life.
Right.
And I think that is a message that's being pushed a lot more, because people are realizing this life is short, man. And if you could find a way to live and work in a place where you actually enjoy what you're doing and you feel like you're making a difference, and again, it goes back to that sense of purpose, then your quality of life is going to be so much higher.
Absolutely.
How many hours a day do you spend with your children?
That depends on the day.
Right? But I mean, ballpark.
But
2 or 3?
Yeah.
2 or 3 on a good
Just
day.
about.
On a good day. How many hours are you at work?
Way too many.
Way too. So when you start looking at it that way, I better be enjoying what I'm doing, because if I'm not, those 2 to 3 hours when I'm sitting in front of my kids aren't going to be a good exchange. Because if I'm carrying all this anger and irritability and responsibility and stress from my workday, now I'm bringing that home, and I'm supposed to enjoy my kids and just have fun. Well, I mean, good luck.
You know, I've kind of mastered that.
You have?
So I had a really shitty day yesterday.
Okay.
And
no, it's good.
I had a just really, really shitty day. And admittedly, my wife and I were fighting too. Uh-huh. And I've developed this. Have you watched The Good Place?
No.
Okay. Well, they have these like skin suits for the demons, and I have these imaginary skin suits for myself.
Okay.
And it's a process where I take one off and put on another in between roles. Mm-hmm. And so after being extremely irritated, I got home and cranked the music on in the kitchen and started dancing and cooking.
So you're good. It was a nice escape for you.
It was an escape. I was still really angry, but I left it at the door, which is, it's a practice. I'm not always great at it. I don't want to sit here saying like, oh, I've got this under control. But there are moments where I'm able to consciously just kind of steer away from that, because I let it consume me for too long.
But I don't think that's unhealthy, right? Because if I'm having issues in my house, right, and I'm stepping into the workplace, I have to be able to compartmentalize. I shouldn't bring. Now, is it nice to have somebody to talk to and say, hey, I'm going through something outside of here, so if I'm behaving a certain way, just let me know.
Right.
Sure, that's healthy. But if I don't kind of leave what's going on at home and then come to work and not allow it to consume me, I think that's healthy. I think it's necessary.
And the reverse is, I would argue, more important.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Because not bringing that home, it's critical. You want to be there. You want to be present. And for me, I mean, that lesson came with COVID in those lockdowns when I was with my kids all day. And that was a very different experience. And it's weird to say, but I almost missed that time, as crazy as that sounds. But there was a connection that we made that we never really had. And till this very day, I'm closer to my kids than ever before because of that time, which I find extremely weird to say.
Why do you say that? What's so weird about it?
The world was on fire. Yeah. And so it's weird to find that, I guess, positive effect on one aspect of your life when it had so many detrimental effects as well.
Of course.
Because there's a lot I don't miss about it, particularly in seeing your bank account just basically.
It's it's never a good day, right?
Yeah. So there's that weird kind of internal battle of like, I miss doing all of that and the board games every night and doing all of this. At the same time, I hate that, we fucking lost all of that. Yeah. So.
But you still have the drive to now open Crackers. Or now are you part owner, you said?
Yeah.
Part owner of Crackers, and then now you're looking to launch. Tell us about what you're looking to launch.
So right now, what a couple friends and I are working on is an organization called Heal for Us. We finally just got our incorporated as a 501(c) 2 days ago here in the state of Florida. And we essentially want to pay for your therapy. The way we're allocating the resources will be 6 months of talk therapy is what we're going to be initially funding, the most affordable type and where we want to start, and then try to expand services from there depending on our ability to fundraise. We're estimating right now to get 100,000 people 6 months of therapy would be roughly $30 million, including administrative. We need people to kind of...
To get how many people therapy?
100,000 people for 6 months.
Okay.
And so it's a cause that I think will have a lot of impact on the world. I think, one, if we, as a population, are processing our emotions and our feelings more and are detaching more from groupthink, it will ultimately affect our economy. It'll affect our politics. Rather than looking at it from a stance of like, here are our core values, what I've written down really is a core of questions. How low can we get the suicide rate if we really work together on this and target the right people with the right resources and the right help? How many homes can we either keep together or at least help end amicably, where children are less affected by, a divorce or a separation, whatever the case may be? How many drug overdoses can be avoided if people really receive the help they need? And so I look at that, and the only barrier to these problems is money. And there's plenty of money out there. And so in taking an entrepreneurial approach, I think that we can find the right people to donate that will be more vested in the human outcome. And I'm also relying on these young people out there that I know will contribute, whether it's a small amount or a full, like whatever the case may be. We talked earlier about the empathy in these young people, particularly on TikTok. That's really where we feel that we're going to have the biggest impact in terms of raising money. And so that's really the gist of it. As crazy as it sounds, but we'd like to change the course of humanity in a way.
And how do you fund that? I know you're saying like contributions from people who would support you, but how is that sustainable?
So there's actually so that's going to be the launch fundraising. There are grants out there that we'll be going after as well, but the kind of phase 2 is actually for-profit businesses and events that will exclusively fund the organization.
Okay.
I don't do really well with asking for money.
Okay.
So we have a couple of things planned on the horizon, and depending on when this airs, we'll see where we are in this process
Tomorrow.
But On the event side, I love music, and particularly music has been a huge help with my own depression. And I've got a soundtrack for every kind of stage that I've been through. And the event I really want to put together is covers of artists that we lost to suicide or accidental overdose. And it shows that a generation was deprived of because of these illnesses. Mac Miller was in his 20s when he took his own life. Think about Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston,
I
Prince.
think about Kurt Cobain. That's the first person I thought about.
There's so many artists that we lost to these diseases, and we were robbed of the experience of seeing them live and putting out new music. And so I'd love to see a show that's a tribute to these people. So that's one aspect that we'd like to not only grow, but eventually maybe even take on tour, as crazy as that sounds.
No, that's awesome.
And then another one is actually, and this was kind of how the entire idea started, was actually a clothing line. So this started with a tweet from a friend of mine who's incredibly insightful and deep and poetic. And he was talking about, and I don't want to butcher his tweet because it was beautiful, but I have a terrible memory, but it was along the lines of healing for our children and giving them the best version of ourselves, and we are the new ancestors. And that phrase hit me like a ton of bricks. Viewed myself as a father, but never really thought of myself as an ancestor and how my great grandkids will be affected by the choices I make today. So that thought took me for a whirl, and I had to sit with that for several days. And that was really the spark that kind of launched this whole idea. And so the hope is to collaborate with higher end designers, helping them get us shirts that will range in price anywhere between $120 to $200 to try to really maximize our gains and profits to help that fund the organization.
And what about, so the therapists themselves will be getting paid through those grants and through those?
Yes, and we actually don't want discounts from the therapists. We want to pay full price. We want the patient to understand that they are entitled to this care, and that I've heard a lot of not so great stories when it comes to public programs. So there are some people, at least, who would be almost hesitant in a free mental health program, where we want to reassure them, like, no, you're paying in full. Somebody else is just fronting the bill. From
a standpoint of just thinking about costs, you might be able, and I think we spoke about this before, and you wanted to use like the best of the best. Sometimes that's not affordable, or you can't, that's not, like that model might not be able to be replicable in the sense where if we wanted to use registered mental health counselor interns, who are people who have just graduated with a master's degree, they already have so many hours of counseling.
Right.
But before they become licensed, they need to give like 2,000 hours.
Right.
So their cost is much less. And then have you looked at any treatment modalities where you could do 30 minutes of therapy versus 60 minutes, and whether or not that could be just as effective depending on how depressed these people are? Because if you're trying to touch base with people weekly for therapy, I'm sure there's research that might give you a different methodology depending on what's going on with the patient that could save you money and allow you to help instead of 100,000, 200,000, 250,000.
Right. So these are all the answers that I don't have, which is why the first two people I called were you and my friend who is a social worker, because those are the aspects that I offer no value, right? I can't make these types of determinations. And so I need people that are much smarter than me around me that are going to help kind of drive these conversations.
It's not even about smarter. It's just you've been exposed to it, so you have a different understanding or different framework to work with to begin with. So I know how effective a registered mental health counselor intern who's really invested in their patient can be compared to maybe even a veteran licensed individual who doesn't give a shit. There's a difference in therapists.
Right.
There's a difference in quality of every single profession that you go to. So to find the right people that really understand, again, the mission and the values that support that mission, That's the part that's going to make this not only sustainable but successful over time. But it's cool because I know so many of my patients who their insurance may not cover therapy that need it.
Right.
The medications are that Band-Aid. The medications are treating the symptoms, but the underlying issue is the environment they put themselves in, the situations, the problems that they're having at home with their spouse, with their children. They don't know how to handle it. So until we get them the proper help where they can really dissect those problems and look at them and say, oh shit, this is what's causing these issues in my life. My behavior is contributing to these negative aspects of my life.
Right.
Let me look in the mirror and try to fix some of these things. Sometimes people can't do that alone. And medications can help us with those symptoms. Like you were talking about being extremely depressed and maybe having passive death wishes. Medications can help with that. Medications can help with motivation, energy, concentration. Can help with death wishes, even with that negativity that exists. But, and there's a huge but, it's not going to solve the underlying issue.
Right. It's no good without the work.
Exactly.
I've been on a couple of different medications depending on the time, and they definitely help me stay lucid enough to be able to kind of function. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, where the progress happens is on my weekly therapy session, in talking things out. And like I missed one a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like everything was weird that week just because I didn't have that space where I just kind of, and I do it on Mondays for a reason. Like I want to start my week there, dropping everything off the table that happened the previous week, talking about what's coming up. And then it's almost like a preparedness meeting for me. And so that's why we're actually really prioritizing the talk therapy over medication in the beginning, because we feel like there are enough people out there who understand it, want to do the work, and simply don't have the access. There's been a huge kind of resurgency of removing the stigma. We see it with huge names like Charlemagne the God. We see a lot of hip hop artists now talking about mental health. It's become a cultural norm to speak about it.
We're pushing that envelope for sure.
We are. I know there are generations that will still resist it and et cetera. And ultimately there are going to be people we can't reach. And I do understand that.
What's your family's view on mental health in general in terms of from a cultural standpoint? Like the
Haitian ranges
culture?
From the age group. It's just about the same as anybody else's, right? The older you get, the less open. The younger, the far more open.
What's the advice that the elders give you?
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's bullshit. Your problems are nothing. You know what it's like in Palestine when missiles are flying at your head.
That's exactly right. But that's true of any immigrant population, right? And I was having this conversation with my brother a while back who was venting about his father-in-law and some windows that he didn't want to like get rid of. And I was like, and I don't know why I was like being in this mindset that day as he's talking to me, because normally I probably would have made fun of him too. But I was like, dude, you and I will never understand what it's like to leave a country and all of our possessions behind and seek in search of something else. Like that, like you talk about generational trauma. We've had a hard time like moving to northern Florida, where it's like, what are we gonna do? Our family's so far. Like it's a 2-hour flight.
It's not bad.
Like, and all of our families and friends can afford it every once in a while, and we can in the other direction.
And we haven't lost all of our possessions.
Yeah, like we're taking the shit with us. A truck's gonna come load this stuff up, and we find that as like such a weird thing. And like my dad, when he was 17, crossed the Atlantic on a boat and landed. I think his first place was Nicaragua, or Ecuador. I think Ecuador was first, and that he traveled all around South America and then ended up in Chicago where he met my mom. And like it was just this wild story. And like, you try to talk to him about, certain event affecting you. It's like, fuck off. And kind of rightfully so. I get it. I get it. But the younger generations definitely see it differently. And we're more open in talking about it and in medication use and in therapy. And And the effects of physical health. You know, I've been to a few of your boot camps, and I love the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. I promise I'm back on Saturday.
There you go. So actually going back to the boot camp, and I know that you've been on somewhat of a weight loss and weight gain roller coaster. Let's talk about that real quick. I know that you got really heavy into fitness for a while.
Yep, lost 70 pounds right after I left Pincho. I basically spent most of my time working out and at the park with my kids. That was a big part of why I stepped down. I realized everything that I missed, and I'm like, I'm not missing another moment. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, at the same time, my wife's business was starting to take off. Her photography was doing really well. So I was like, well, you know, we just took some money off the table, and we'll work on what's coming next. And, you know, I'll take care of the kids for a while. So I was dropping off and picking up and cooking dinner and doing all of that fun stuff. And it was really great. And so I'd lost the 70 pounds, COVID hits, and I basically gained all of it back, 100% of it. And I was on a really sustainable program at the time. I was having burgers, pizza, and tacos every single week. That was a non-negotiable for me. Friday is pizza day. I cannot go a week without burgers, and tacos are fucking tacos. Like, and you know, I wouldn't mix any of that in a singular day. So if we were having pizza for dinner, it was a veggie omelet for breakfast, something veg heavy for lunch, the pizza for dinner. The math on that day worked out pretty well. And I'm also pretty blessed in the metabolic department where my body just naturally burns 2,400 calories a day. So when I work out enough, my budget to lose weight is a little over 3,000 calories.
That's good.
It's really great. Yeah. So, you know, I did have some advantages there. I'm back on track now. I've lost 20 pounds in the last 60 days. So that's been good to see that the body remembers.
And why? What's been the difference?
Getting back into the gym, and you know, I've been out for the last 3 weeks because I bad form on a stupid deadlift. That really moronic decision I made that day. But even then, I've trained myself. Like I can't sit through this. I'd still move. I'd still do other things because I have this annoying friend on social media who's always telling me to move and not stay stagnant.
What's his name?
Some asshole named Adrian.
Yeah.
That day that you posted about going to the gym and not wanting to was the day I hurt myself. I'm just saying.
So it's my fault.
I'm not saying causation, but there's a little bit of correlation there.
Sorry. I apologize. Send me the bill. What the hell am I supposed to say? No, but it's good. And so what has given you, so again, like your resilience shows, you lost the weight, you gained it back. Some people would just be like, oh, screw this.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I wanted to.
Yeah.
So the first night I went back to Legacy, it was a Wednesday night. It was a really stupid move. Stupid day to go back to Legacy. Okay. And for those of you who aren't familiar, on Wednesdays, it's conditioning days. It's a ton of cardio. And for fat people like me, that sucks. Okay. So I walked in and instantly the mind fuck happens because I had been used to seeing a certain me in that mirror as I'm walking out, or at least the last time I walked out of there, I saw a version of myself. And when I walked in and looked in the mirror, it had actually dawned on, I knew the numbers, but visually I could see the amount of weight that I'd put back on, and instantly I got in my own head. Coincidentally, that day I also forgot to take my anxiety medication. So halfway through this class, I leave in tears. I was out, like done.
You left not in literal tears, right?
No, literal tears, Adrian. Left, cried in the car. Okay.
No, you didn't. Come on. Man.
I swear to God. It was, dude, out of breath. I'm getting nauseous. It was, and again, it's that ego of where I was performing the last time I was in that gym. And now, like station 5, I'm fucking dying. It was a really weird dynamic.
I usually bring Vagisil for days like that. It makes me feel better. I'm just saying, man. But anyhow, sorry.
And this is my supportive group of friends, ladies and gentlemen. Always keep you on your toes.
There you
But I was back the next day. And you know, I forgave myself for really breaking down that day, but I wasn't gonna let it keep me away. And so I was back the very next day on a nice Thursday strength day.
There you go.
And did pretty well. And I've been, you know, increasing and improving every week that I've gone. And as I've been out with this stupid injury, I've stayed active at home, whether it be with yoga or even dancing, just making sure that I stayed moving, and I kept on with the weight loss, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be back for a noon class. So.
Yeah, but you're back on track though. That's awesome.
I am eating much better, and also wanting to demonstrate it for my kids, model these habits for them, and get them active and involved. And
that's actually what I talked about this morning. I threw up a quick reel, and it was about modeling behaviors, and we don't realize how much the people around us influence the things that we do, the behaviors that we engage in, even the thoughts that we have sometimes, because we're influenced constantly by our environment. And today in the gym, at the end, it was one of those 2-minute drills where you do something for the last 2 minutes of the class. And we were supposed to do like a plank or something. And the guy across from me, he's ripped, he's lean. You ever heard of 54D?
yes,
So he won 54D over COVID.
Wow.
And he's maintained and he stayed lean. His name is, shout out to Jonathan Rico. So dude is shredded. And I'm there just doing a push up and whatever. I'll just hold myself in a plank here. All good. And all of a sudden I hear, Adrian, shoulder taps. Like, oh, all right, here we go. But then I yelled at Gabby, and then I yelled at Gio, and before you know it, we had everybody, all of us were probably tired already. But the fact that one person set the standard, and then everybody just modeled that behavior.
There's something about Legacy that they really cracked the code on the blend of fitness and community. It's hard to describe. It's about to become like a Legacy commercial right now,
Yeah.
but like they have really. There's something about having that partner and the accountability, and even if they're not their partner, as you mentioned, somebody across the room, kind of, there's that aspect, and it's not, and it doesn't come from a place of shame the way you see it in kind of an LA Fitness where you're trying to work out and there's this kind of egocentric. It feels like, what is it about people who sign up at Legacy that instantly want to support you and cheer you on? Why does this happen? I think it starts at the top.
Yeah, I think it's the type of person who wants to engage in that type of workout. I think they recognize that, right? And if not, it's part of the model, so it's contagious. The same thing exists in a lot of HIIT training gyms. I went to a place called Fit Lab in McAllen, Texas, and there's only a few of them. But right away, I looked at that model, and it was the same thing where I saw so there's something about these HIIT places that cause that sort of energy. But I think down here, Legacy has definitely tapped into it.
Like Pilates, no such culture. I've never felt more inferior as a human than the couple of Pilates classes.
Did you go on the Reformer, or did you go on
Reformer? Yeah.
All right, try mat Pilates, right?
Okay.
And this lady it's so robotic. All I want to do is get up and punch the lady in the face, and I say this like they need
then I'm not trying this.
They need a punching bag, but she's like, and 10 more, 9, 8, 7. By 6, your leg is burning, right? You want to just rip it off and throw it out the window because it hurts so damn much. And then she's like, other side. You piece of crap. Like, I can't. And actually, my friend Amanda, she's a Pilates instructor. She does privates in her house. And I told her, I was like, do you know, sometimes I really want to punch you in the face. I was like, you need to get a punching bag in here because somebody's going to get violent with you.
Oh, my God.
But she smiles. She's like, it's true. I did Pilates the other day, and she wanted to punch the instructor in the face. So I was like, all right. The feeling is, at least I'm not alone. I'm not that violent. But it's awesome as all. This is where there's dead space, and I just eat grapes. So what do you got going on today?
I'm out of coffee and water is a problem.
That's all right. Oh, actually, we're like almost 2 hours in, believe it or not.
Really?
It's an hour and 45 minutes.
Jeez.
An hour and 48 minutes.
We've barely scratched the surface.
Why? What surface have you not scratched?
Oh, I don't even know what haven't we covered yet. We talked about crackers, how that's going. Really, I'm having fun with that project, which is important to me. Fun is, if I'm not enjoying it, I just can't get into it. Talked about the foundation a bit. Website should be up soon. Hopefully by the time this airs, that's out. War zones. No, I actually think we have covered most of it.
War zones.
War zones. Covered that. Covered COVID.
Where did you see? So I already asked you about like what your sense of, or what your purpose is.
Yes. I mean, I leaving a better world for my children is a big one. But I like putting my energy towards things that I can actually solve, or at least lay the groundwork for real solutions. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason I never, to tie back to the kind of politics, there's no incentive to fix things in current American politics. And so I guess in a weird way in my head, I feel like if we can get enough people therapy, they'll stop falling for the Jedi mind tricks of politicians, and maybe we can start making collective better decisions as a country. Wouldn't that be something?
But do you think that therapy will translate to that?
I do.
Why?
I do.
What aspect of therapy do you think is going to change?
A couple of, one, I mean, just being able to take a step back and breathe before reacting. When you think of a lot of the heightened political culture, a lot of it is emotional reaction. Mm-hmm. And when you think of the groupthink, and when you think of people sharing articles like Joe Biden giving crack pipes for racial justice, right? All of that comes from that emotional reaction. These tech companies have really figured out how to pull on our emotional and neurological strings, right? And so for people who are trained to control that, that's not going to have the same effect. When I see an article, for instance, about the Don't Say Gay bill, the first thing I do is I go and read the text. And I'm like,
but most people don't.
This isn't that.
But I don't, do you think that's a matter of therapy? It's just a matter of laziness. Like, we just don't read. We don't really do our due diligence and research. We just kind of go with the clickbait, and it's like the game of telephone. This is what happened. This is what happened.
I do. I do think there's at least a way to curb it, where to make people more curious for more information. Well, tell me more about that, right? Let me look into this. And I know there is some laziness aspect to it, but really what happens is this says something about a person I don't like, therefore I immediately agree with it, therefore share it. It's against the Democrat, I'm going to share it. Oh, this makes DeSantis look bad, I'm going to share it. Yeah. And so it becomes this Crip blood type of mentality that ultimately leads back to a lack of emotional intelligence.
I think you're right. I think where it will help is in the processing, in terms of slowing yourself down and not being so impulsive, and really digesting or what it is that you're reading, and maybe not being so reactive. But that would take a lot of insight on the person who understands, like, oh, I am being impulsive.
I didn't say this was getting done in a generation, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Again, we're trying to lay groundwork. I mean, our system has been corrupted over decades and a couple centuries now, right? And so undoing that is not a year or two thing. It's going to take a lot of work to shape the way people think and the way they process information, especially in a world that is designed to mess with your head and how you process information.
I was going to say, you're up against some juggernauts.
Yes, which is why I'm always, advising people to read things like Hate Inc., where it's like, no, there's a purposeful entity at play here that wants you to hate your neighbor because of the person they voted for. And that's a wild thing to convince people. There was a CBS poll some point last year. Somewhere around 60% of Americans thought that other Americans were the biggest threat to their livelihood. How crazy is that?
And based off of what?
Based off of the fact that they supported the other party.
Wow.
And there's a fine line we're walking, particularly when it comes to the Democratic Party constantly referring to Republicans as racists or Nazis or white supremacists, because when you consider what you're doing to be punching Nazis, right? there's no limit to where you'll go. And free speech is a conversation that's come up a lot over the last couple of years. And we're starting to see a really weird shift in dynamic of the way we silence people, right? I don't know enough about the solutions on the social media side, because the few things that I've read will actually cause more censorship. So, for instance, people talk about removing I think it's Section 12 protection about lawsuits and treating them like a platform and not a publisher. But if you remove those, that's actually going to increase. The incentive is to then increase the amount of censorship they do, because they're going to want to be very careful on what's put on their platform. So I don't know what the solution is there. The only solution that I can think of is to help people think more critically. And help people understand that there are people trying to purposely make you angry.
What have you taught your kids about this? Because we could talk about how you want to change a generation, but how have you educated your children on this?
So there's a few different ways that I have these types of conversations with my kids.
I haven't touched my water, so you can have that if you need it.
No, you're good.
No.
Every day when I see them, I ask them the same 5 questions. One, the generic, how was your day, right? And you get that generic one-liner. But I proceed with 5 questions.
It was good.
Yeah, it's fine. So I asked them a series of questions that in the beginning was a little awkward, and then now over time I've noticed them observing their own behaviors and their peers a little more. So I asked them how they were kind to someone, how someone was kind to them, how someone was kind to someone else. Did anybody make them feel uncomfortable? And did they witness anybody making someone else feeling uncomfortable? And I ask that of them daily.
Wow, those are excellent questions, honestly.
And I want them to recognize what friendship looks like, what is not friendship, what love looks like, like understanding these social cues. We were talking about how stuff like that has been affected in kids through COVID. Asking them questions that will make them observe these things throughout their day, I hope will help them kind of be able to develop these skills and process all of that. I share that we have almost all 3 of them in therapy for one thing or another. It's basically just giving them the tools to recognize when someone's being genuine and when someone's being manipulative.
And has it, like, what are some of the things that you've kind of come across where you said, oh, wow, like this is landing, like they get it. They understand why I'm asking them these questions.
It's a mixed bag on some days, particularly with my youngest, because she's very much in La La Land. She's how would I describe Sarah? Idealist, pacifist. She just lives in the land of unicorns. Okay. That's basically where she's at. With the other 2, I've noticed that they're starting to open up more about witnessing things amongst kids where one might be teasing another, and they're bringing that up more and having more productive conversations with me on that. And just an overall awareness of their surroundings and how people treat each other and how they should not only stand up for themselves, but for others. And so, one day my youngest came and was super proud of herself because one girl was being teased in class, and she stepped in front of this boy who was teasing her, and she got a high five. And I don't know what I was talking to my oldest about, something that happened, and I was like, look, if you ever get in trouble for punching someone because you're defending another person, trust me, we're going to Carvel. Like,
we'll be good.
We're not going to get in trouble for punching someone in the defense of someone else.
Yeah, I agree. I think kids definitely need to learn how to step up for one another, because the amount of bullying that exists is crazy. And I think about it now as a kid, like, yeah, it was definitely apparent, but I don't think it was as visible as it is now, just because we talk about it more.
Right.
Before it was just part of, hey, there's a bully in school, yeah, whatever, you deal with the bully. And if it push comes to shove, you better hit him or you're going to get beat up. But then
Well, we also had a generation of parents telling us to actively beat their ass.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was a very different type of parenting style back then, where if you got punched and didn't punch back, you were going to get punched again at home.
Yeah, it's true.
So there was that aspect, and I think there's a healthier way of doing that into where they can defend themselves without being told that that's the only way to solve a problem either.
The other option is jujitsu.
Yes.
That's
I actually want to get my girls into
How old are your girls?
12, 8, and 7.
12, 8, and 7. How's the 12-year-old right now?
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we see the prequel of what's to come.
Okay.
Occasionally, the occasional slam door.
How do you check that? How do you address those behaviors like that when you're like, oh, you're definitely crossing that line right now?
That depends on where I am emotionally that day. On my worst days, I burst in and,
Hey.
Yeah, do one of those. And on my better ones, I give her a few minutes and then I call her into my room and we talk about it. And we talk about how, she wouldn't appreciate it if somebody did it to her. And we just talk about what she was really feeling, what could have done differently. So, you got to mess them up a little bit. They need some therapy while they're adults, right?
Oh, yeah. No, it's not even therapy. I think you're just addressing boundaries, and sometimes I think kids, I've seen it in my daughter over the past year. So between 12 and she'll be 13 now in April, she just is constantly pushing that line. And for a while, my treatment was love, just love. Oh, just chill. Just be cool. Just no worries. But then after a while, it was like, oh no. Like this behavior is getting a little bit excess, or you're disrespecting somebody in front of me. You're giving me attitude in front of other people for no reason.
Right.
And so that's when I was like, no, this behavior is not going to continue. And guess what? I think initially I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my daughter by being hard and disciplined. But I found that the opposite is true.
Right. That
when you do address those boundaries and you let her know the expectations, that the love actually comes more so. It's weird because you would think that you could just treat it with love and patience and kindness, but then it's like, no, you need to freaking put your foot down and raise your voice sometimes.
Right. With big emotions, the love and the acceptance works really well. When it comes to behavior, you really do need to draw as many boundaries as you can. I dropped a huge F-bomb on my two little ones. And, it was the third time I asked for that floor in the bathroom to be picked up. And, I am sick and fucking tired of repeating myself.
And all of a sudden.
And let me tell you, since that day, that bathroom floor has been immaculate.
But why do we have to go to that, right? That's my question. It's always like, why do I have to go to the 7?
She's 7.
It's the 7.
Yeah, it's the 7-year-old. That's what our 12-year-old was the really awesome one that made us think that we were a great parent. So we went and had 2 more, and then we realized we didn't know shit. It's the other 2 are very interesting. So they were almost Irish twins. They were almost born in the same year, and there is major separation anxiety when they are not together. They do everything together. But they also fight a lot because they do everything together. So I remember this one day, I'm downstairs and I hear just insane screaming coming from upstairs. They're taking a bath. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I run up there as fast as I can, only to witness my 8-year-old with her forearm against the little one, against the shower. She's like screaming at her.
What was it about?
I don't know, because I just started laughing so hard at the sight. I could not contain my laughter at this, and I shouldn't have. But there's something about when she loses her shit that's hilarious.
So you don't even know what it was about.
I broke it up, and they figured it out. They showered or whatever. A couple days later, I hear a similar type of screaming. I'm run upstairs thinking I'm going to witness the same thing. And they've got these sticks in the shower. I think they were like crayon water guns or something. Okay. And they're air guitaring. Like, I never know what's going to happen when I'm walking in on bath time here. It's like, it's either an MMA match or a concert. Like,
That's awesome, though. Kids they teach you a lot about life, no?
oh, hell yeah. If only we could retain more of their spirit as adults.
What happens to, like me, I think I'm always going to be a kid. I'm always going to bullshit. I'm always going to have fun. I'm always going to joke around.
I think you find it a lot in entrepreneurs that they've held on to more of that childlike mentality in the good ways, right? Not in the irresponsible, but in the, I want this to be fun. I want to enjoy this. I don't know.
Yeah, I want everybody who's in this place to enjoy being here. I don't, and I let them know, like, your stay here might be temporary, but as long as you're here, I want you to be happy while you're here.
Right.
And what can we do to make this a more enjoyable environment? And I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I have to find still even more ways to do that. But I think in general, the environment we keep around here is light. And I think I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, there's times where I see them having some sort of existential crisis or talking about astrology. And you know what? Go for it, man. Like, the work is getting done, and you guys want to have this deep conversation about how you're a fire sign and how I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Mercury's in retrograde right now. Just know that, right? It's not. See, it's not.
Yeah, it is not at the moment. But somehow, the positioning of a planet that has nothing to do with ours.
What's your sign?
Is affecting your life.
What's your sign? What's your sign?
So, this is the funny part.
Oh, here we go.
I am an Aries, and I do fit that like ram type of mentality. I have the grace of a rhino, but I think that's purely coincidence. I was born in April, and I'm really stubborn and will run through walls to get things.
I have no follow-up questions because I know nothing about this.
Neither do I.
Okay.
That's as far as I know, is that people say that I fit an Aries profile perfectly.
But they say that about every freaking. They say, "Oh, you're a Leo. Of course you're a Leo.
Of course you are."
Oh God, here, shoot me. So,
and there goes half of the audience
Yeah.
right now. Just fuck these guys.
Yeah. Don't worry, I have my crystals. Yeah, there goes. We keep on losing them.
It's just dropping like flies at this stage.
I was going to ask you one more question that usually traumatizes a lot of the male guests that are here. Have you talked to your 12-year-old daughter about sex at all?
I have not, and I saw a clip of what your conversation on that. I'm not ready.
You're not ready?
I'm not ready.
How about, is your wife ready?
I would assume she is not only ready but much better equipped than I am on this subject. So I am taking a very hands-off approach on this and trusting her.
Do you know, has she had that conversation with your daughter?
She's had some.
Okay.
I don't know the details.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to.
What if you had a boy? Do you think that would be different right now?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
It's
Because I
interesting,
would
right?
want to teach him differently than what I was taught. So
Yeah.
I think there I would probably be a little more involved.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know how to talk to my daughter about this at all.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And the reason I ask, I keep on asking this to all the guys.
Yeah.
Because I think we have this level of discomfort with talking to our daughters about sex. And it's like, our daughters are going to have sex.
Yeah.
And Joe would have probably jumped over the table and wanted to strangle me right now. But it's like,
It's going to happen.
it's going to happen. It's a reality. So
Our wives are other people's daughters, right? It is, in fact, how it goes, right?
So it's so interesting to think that we know so much and our kids have access to so much, yet we're just going to make the assumption that, I don't know, they're not going to look for it on their own, or somebody else isn't going to talk to them about it. And so my main deal is I just want to make sure that our daughters aren't manipulated. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Because they could be, right? And people will confuse love and feelings and emotion with sex, and they'll twist that up real quick and use that to their advantage.
Right.
And I think it's important for us to educate our daughters on it. That's all.
It's also important that us as fathers show what affection and love looks like from a man, and give them that comfort, and whether it be in the evening cuddling, and really showing them what that looks like, not only in our relationships with their mothers or stepmothers, but with them directly.
It's true. Yeah, we can't expect for us to mistreat them all day and all of a sudden, at the end of the day, cuddle with them because that's their interpretation of love then.
Right.
Right? If they're seeing you irritable, angry, destructive, or using all sorts of language towards everybody around you or even towards them, but then saying, come here, baby, just let me hold on to you. Let's just cuddle and watch TV. Well, then now their interpretation of what love looks like is so screwed up. So it's important for us to address our own behaviors first.
I make it a point, because I do lose my shit on a regular basis, but I make it a point to apologize for it within that same day.
Yeah.
And I tell them, like, listen,
I fucked up.
I fucked up, and I let my emotions get the best of me, and I'm sorry, and end it with hugs and just kind of move on and try to lighten it up that way, because I think that's a big part that previous generations really missed the mark on.
I think that's huge. What you just said in terms of apologizing to our children. If I would have told that to my grandfather, who would have said, apologize for what? I brought them into this world.
My father hears this, he'll probably kick me in the ass.
Right? But it's so strange. It's like, of course we need to apologize. Of course we need to let them know we're not perfect. We're going to screw up, not only yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Because that way it takes some of the pressure off of them. Because I remember being a kid thinking, oh, as I get older, I'm going to be this stellar individual who knows everything that's going on, and my life is going to be perfect, straight and narrow.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And as you get older, life starts kicking you in the face. You start realizing, oh, shit, I screwed up. Or I tried to manipulate the system this way, and I did something I shouldn't have. If I don't learn how to, one, accept my behavior, not be in denial, acknowledge that I fucked up, but that also forgive myself. And that comes also from learning how your father forgave you, or how your mom asked for forgiveness from you, etc. I mean, it goes either way. But if we don't apologize to our kids, how do we expect for them to apologize not only to other people, but to themselves?
Right.
So that's cool. I know a lot of parents that still have that mindset of, oh, no, I have no reason to apologize or to admit that I did wrong. They want to be this omniscient character.
And that leaves open for their very undeveloped brains to interpret how you reacted. And that could go in a variety of ways.
Yeah. They could blame it on
an episode of Euphoria. Right? And so, it's important to not only just show them the love and the discipline, but also your own accountability for when we fuck up, because we're humans too. We're parents, but we are human, and we are going to get it wrong. At an instance a few months ago, youngest daughter has a tantrum. She was really sleepy, didn't want to leave grandma, and we brought her home and just loses her shit. And because of prior really terrible ways that I've reacted to tantrums, the middle one is upstairs losing it, worried about what's going to happen to her sister. Broke my heart. The fact, I had to leave the one having the tantrum to go comfort the other one, because she was sobbing. What are you gonna do to Sarah? Because I've really blown up on the tantrums. When they were 3 and 2, we went through 45-minute to an hour synchronized tantrums with the both of them. Oof. So it took me a long time to forgive myself for how I reacted to those. And I bring it up to them till this very day and talk about the difference between my reactions today to my reactions back then and how I've grown as a person. And there's no shame in showing your kids that you've grown in their lifetime.
No, that's awesome. Again, I don't think a lot of parents are having those conversations with their kids. Just letting them know that I screwed up. Not only I screwed up back then. Remember how much I screwed up? Look at what I've learned since then. Look at how I've grown as an individual. That's huge.
I tell them all the time, just make new mistakes. Don't repeat them. Just make new ones. I use that everywhere. I use that in business. I use that at home. Just make new mistakes. Fuck something new up.
It's true, right? Because if you're making the same mistake, then you're just repeating the pattern over and over. That means you're not learning anything. If you're making new mistakes, then you're actually trying to do something else.
Right. That's progress. Making new mistakes is progress.
I respect that 100%. So where can people find you?
Most social media platforms, Nedal Ahmad. I know I'll butcher the spelling, and that's okay. I'm used to that already, but not a lot of Nedals in this town, so I'm sure you'll be able to find that there.
Awesome, man. Anything left for you to say? Any comment? Anything you want to put out there?
It all. I appreciate you having me on. I always enjoy talking to you. I've always respected you and admired you, and I love that we got this chance to talk, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, it was an honor and a pleasure for me because I've been following you as a human, as an entrepreneur for a long time. So I had to make an excuse to drag you in here and suck a conversation out of you. But we'll do it again, man.
I'm glad I started my day this way, and now I get to go to the lovely restaurant and have lots of fun.
And I'll be at Crackers sometime in the next 2 weeks, probably.
Come on by, man.
All right, man. Hey,
thank you so much.
Thanks,
bro.
Nedal. Appreciate it, man.